Shalom, Shabbat, happy Saturday, peace. Finishing part 3 of Scroll of Melchizedek, Story of the Universe. And man, submissive to the Creator, would reign forever and ever on Mount Zion, in the midst of the praises of the eternal universal hosts. More all that depended entirely on human positioning in the face of the temptations of the enemy, who would do everything to snatch the kingdom. Adam and Eve were afraid to know Satan's plans, but they were comforted to learn that he could not do him any harm, forcing them to eat the forbidden fruit. If, however, he tried to intimidate them with his power, all the eternal hosts would come to his aid. The messengers of the light concluded their mission by recommending the couple to remain vigilant, always keeping in mind the responsibility that rested upon them. They should not be separated from each other, not even for a moment, because they alone could be seduced. Adam and Eve, grateful for the angel's warnings, joined the voices in a song of promise and an eternal victory. They were sure that they would never abandon the blessed Creator, hearing the tempter's voice. Encouraged by the human promise, the two messengers returned to the bosom of the celestial Jerusalem, where, together with the holy hosts, they would anxiously await the desired triumph. Satan saw the messengers approaching paradise and heard the song of man promising an eternal victory. That song made his envy and hatred increase so that he could not contain them. He then told his followers that he would soon silence that irritating voice. He would do everything to transform human paradise into blasphemies of the Creator. The rebel hosts were curious to know their boss's plans, but were warned by him that they should wait until everything was forever determined. If man heard his voice, eating from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he would be victorious, forever possessing the domain of the universe. If man resisted, remaining faithful to the Creator, there would be no hope for them. Paradise seemed to be surrounded by eternal security, but in the countenance of man one could see an expression of fear. Since the angels departed, Adam and Eve remained silent, meditating reverently on the enormous responsibility of their mission. They thought of the seriousness of the impending test that would seal their future and that of the entire creation. Encouraged, however, before the thought of a victory, they once again united the voices in a song that expressed the certainty of the coveted victory. That melody removed from their minds all the fear of defeat, and happily they ran through the green meadows, accompanied by the fiery animals that seemed to commemorate the great conquest. They felt safe in their paradise, totally forgotten about the danger of a possible assault. Satan, who was watching the couple closely, perceived that his opportunity was coming. He approached the paradise invisibly, and was waiting for the best time to arm his ambush. Unaware of the presence of the enemy, the couple continued in their detached joy, playing carelessly with the animals. In the deranged countenance of Satan a malicious smile was stamped. Witnessing the carelessness of the couple, in their exaltation they had stopped attending the last recommendation of the messengers, turning away from each other. The cunning enemy, wasting no time, took possession of a snake, the most beautiful in paradise, making it gracefully approach Eva. Eva, who sat in the grass playing with animals, perceived the presence of the attractive snake, whose body reflected the colors of the rainbow. She was admired to see her pick flowers and fruits from the garden, placing them at her feet. Grateful, he took her in his arms, dedicating affection. Having conquered the affection of the woman, Satan, in his cunning, began to attract her next to the tree of the science of good and evil. Without realizing the danger, Eva accompanied the snake to the test tree. There, holding the hidden army of the enemies, he caressed him and said words of love. With the brightness of seduction in his eyes, the snake began to speak. His words were full of wisdom and tenderness, and his voice like that of an angel. Eve could hardly believe her eyes. His joy became immense for having such a fantastic creature in his arms. He began to talk about many things: love, the beauty of the garden, the power of the Creator. Eva was admired at the extensive knowledge of the snake, which ran with mastery on any subject. Wrapped by that experience, Eva completely forgot about her partner. Not even the angel's warnings passed through his mind. Adam, entirely forgotten about the advice of the heavenly messengers, had appeared in the company of some animals. After a while, the memory of his warnings received came with momentum in his mind. The last words spoken to the angels sounded clearly in his ears. Do not depart from each other. Do not separate for a moment. It is dangerous. His heart pounded realized, when he raised his voice in an anxious shout. His voice, when impacting through the vaults of the paradise, however, did not bring an answer. The silence almost stifled him. In his affliction, he ran from side to side, looking for her in vain. In that ancient search, she felt the breeze caress her hair and remembered her first dream. That memory, however, was undone by the thought of the danger that threatened them. When the mind was taken by a great sense of guilt, Adam hastened the pace in that anguished search. Where would your beloved be? Would he wrap her in time in his arms, freeing her from falling? More than once he raised his voice in an anxious shout that reverberated throughout the garden. Eva, where are you? He waited for an answer, but heard only an empty echo that despaired. He remembered the tree of science of good of evil. There was the only place where his partner could be deceived. Hoping to obstruct the enemy's only opportunity, he advanced in the direction of the test site. His heart pounded when he contemplated the cup of the forbidden tree in the distance. With the snake in her arms, Eva questioned her about many things. He marveled at the perception of the snake was overwhelming her great knowledge. Full of curiosity, she asked the snake, "Where is the source of your great knowledge? Answer me, because I want to own it too." Without wasting time, Satan pointed to the tree of science and of good and evil, replied, "There is the source of all my knowledge." He then told him a liar story. He said he was a snake like the others, eating the fruits of paradise. Tasting a certain day of that forbidden fruit, he received, as if by charm, all the virtues. Looking toward the tree of the science of in good and evil, Eva was surprised and confused. Would the Creator deprive in his love something so good in his creatures? Seeing her surprise, Satan asked, "Is it so that God said, 'You shall not eat all of the trees in the garden'?" Eva, restless, replied, "In the fruit From the fruits of the garden trees we eat. More of the fruit of that tree you claim to be a source of wisdom. God said, 'You shall not eat of it, so that you do not die.'" The snake, in a disdainful tone, said, "That is false. If so, I would have died. Certainly the Eternal forbade them to eat from that tree to prevent man from receiving like him, knowing all things." The seductive words of the snake caused confusion in Eva's mind. Who would you trust? He had in mind the memory of the Creator's order in his sentence, but at the same time, he had before him a palpable proof that contradicted him. Dazed, she began to doubt the Creator. My bad. The character of the Eternal. In a challenge, the snake picked fruits from the forbidden tree and began to savor them. Placing a fruit in the woman's hands, he encouraged her to eat, saying, "Didn't the Eternal say that if someone touched that fruit he would die?" A complete silence reigned over the universe. On every inhabited planet, the children of light watched helplessly that distressing scene. Their future was at stake. In Jerusalem there was great commotion. Powerful angels appeared before the Creator, requesting permission to unmask the cowardly enemy. hidden in that snake. The Eternal, however, prevented them from doing so. If the use of force were the solution, I would have already applied it. They should respect the free will granted to man, and he may manifest his choice under the temptation of the enemy. The children of the light suffered immensely when they saw the woman doubting the one who had kindly given them life and the opportunity to reign in that paradise. How could I doubt who gave them so much love? Adam, who, in a strong hope of securing the cherished victory, hurried in on his run, stared into the distance at his beloved sitting by the tree of the evidence. What was Eva doing in that dangerous place? A horrible feeling came upon him, once again remembering the warnings received. But he tried to banish him with the thought that he would reach his wife before any evil occurred to her. Eva hesitated in her conviction as she contemplated the fruit in her hands. For a few moments, the future seemed bleak and frightening, but he overcame that feeling thinking of the glories that he would conquer by eating that fruit. Still, somewhat hesitant, he slowly raised his hands until he touched the fruit with his lips. The subjects of the kingdom of light, shuddering, bowed in great terror. It seemed almost impossible at that moment for the woman to go back, while pale the faithfully inquired about the possible hope. They witnessed with horror the terrible decision of Eve. She had resolved to break forever with the Creator, becoming captive of death. The Eternal, who in silent pain contemplated the scene of rebellion, bowed his forehead with his face bathed in tears. I couldn't bear the pain of that separation. The faithful, who in panic believed themselves defeated, were aware that not everything was lost. If Adam resisted the temptation, remaining faithful to the Eternal, he would seal the great victory. Eve, who had been the victim of a hoax, could be aware of her mistake, being favored with divine forgiveness. When Adam, in his anguished run, reached the test site, it was too late. Sitting by the river, Eva casually savored the forbidden fruit. Adam shivered. Would it be the same fruit of the test? In a gesture of hope, he looked at the tree of science of good and evil, but in tears he recognized the sad condemnation. Full of sadness, he looked at his wife, but found no words to wake her from her bitter reality. In complete despair, he raised his voice in a painful exclamation. Eva, Eva, what are you doing? By eating the forbidden fruit, the woman was taken by emotions that made her imagine having reached a higher sphere of life. Hearing the voice of her husband, still taken by illusory emotions, she raised her forehead, stamping a smile, but was surprised to see him crying. 30. With deep bitterness, Adam brought to know the reason that had led him to rebel against the Eternal. Eva promptly began to tell her of the fantastic story of the wise snake. Satan knew that snake's story would never convince man to eat the fruit of the forbidden tree. He needed to find a subtle way to take him to seal his lot by following in his wife's footsteps. Having Eva under his power, he resolved to make her the tempting object. I would wait for the right moment to link it. On the day you eat of him, you will certainly die. The memory of this silence left Adam very distressed. The expectation of seeing his beloved dying in his arms was too much to bear. This affliction, however, was diminishing, seeing that she remained happy and affectionate at her side, as if no evil had happened to her. Relieved, Adam smiled again, corresponding to the affections of his companion. He surrendered to the sweetest emotions, far wrapped him in those hugs. In that moment of enchantment, Eva began talking about her experience with the science of good and evil. He told him about the treasures of wisdom that had been opened to him. In his new kingdom, he would live very happy. However, that happiness would be incomplete without the participation of her husband. He told her about the impossibility of going back in his steps and insisted that he follow her. After telling her about his decision, Eva, with a sweet smile, extended her hands containing a fruit, asking him to eat it in a demonstration of his love for her. With the tempting voice in his ears, Adam sat on the grass in deep thought. His face turned pale again and his hands trembling. He was afraid to rebel against the Creator, but at the same time he understood that he would not be able to live apart from his companion, whom he loved with infinite love. Eve was the flesh of her flesh, the extension of her being. He felt distressed having to make such a serious decision. The paleness of Adam's face was reflected in the countenance of all the faithful to the Eternal. They heard the insinuation of the enemy and perceived with horror the hesitation of man. Adam's indecision left them desperate. If he obeyed Satan's proposal, all happiness would be eternally banished. In the decisions of the human being was the destiny of the entire universe. Would he attend to Satan's request? After intense internal struggle, Adam looked at his companion. She had joined him in promises of eternal surrender. I wouldn't leave her alone now. He would share with her the results of the rebellion. Then he took a fruit from Eve's hand and, in a rash gesture, brought it to his mouth. Seeking to extinguish the voice of his conscience, which spoke of an eternal destruction, Adam threw himself into his wife's arm, enjoying the high price of his rebellion. Satan, with cries of triumph, left paradise, flying quickly with his innumerable hosts, who anxiously awaited the result of such a risky attempt. Upon learning of human misfortune, they joined in a thunderous party. They felt safe. Zion now belonged to them by right, being able there to establish an eternal kingdom, never being bothered by the laws of the Eternal. Throughout the universe, the children of light suffered a cried defeat. There has never been so much sadness and horror about the future. The voices that lived to sing the praises of to the Creator would now utter lamentations. The Eternal, who, overcome by infinite pain, had prostrated himself in tears at the fall of man, was not, however, surprised. Even before creating the universe, he had already foreseen that triumph of rebellion and, in his wisdom and love, had idealized a rescue plan that would involve him in an immense sacrifice. Drying the tears of his crying, he set out to act mightily in favor of his afflicted faithful, preventing them from falling into the hands of the enemies. In that mysterious intervention that apparently deposed against justice, the Eternal ordered his most powerful angels to immediately circumvent the Garden of Eden, preventing Satan from taking possession of Mount Zion. Consoled before the divine manifestation, the powerful creatures, in prompt obedience, broke the infinite space, instantly surrounding paradise, in which the human being, already upset by sin, lived the blackness of a night that would be long and cruel. Being the authority of the Eternal based on justice, how could he justify his actions before the enemies? Had he not delivered the kingdom to man by his will, and had he not submitted it to Satan by free choice? While surprised, the rational creatures considered the decisive actions of God. They heard his powerful voice that, reverberating throughout creation, brought the revelation of the great mystery. Revelation so wonderful that from that moment, for all the eternity, it would occupy the mind of the faithful, being the subject for the sweetest meditations. The Eternal spoke first about the terrible condemnation that hung over man and all creation. He said that by detaching himself from the source of life, man had plunged into such a deep abyss that he could not be reached by his arm of justice and power. Humiliated and tortured by the claws of the enemy, there was no other man left beyond death. Painful fruits of his spontaneous rebellion. Considering the human situation, the hosts of light saw no chance of triumph. They knew that only man could resume the enemy's dominance, returning it to the Creator. But the human being, eternally enslaved in his nature, would be incapable of such victory. In a melodious voice and full of tenderness, God revealed the plan of redemption, saying, "Truly, man will reap the fruits of his rebellion in a terrible death. I cannot with my power change his luck. If he acted like this, it would be unfair before my decree. But I will bring down all the condemnation on a substitute that will arise in human descent. The man will not bring into his hands the rings of death, being innocent and uncontaminated in his nature. As a representative of the human race, he will face Satan and overcome him. After triumphing in that battle, proving that love is stronger than selfishness, that truth is stronger than lies, that humility is more powerful than pride, that faithful substitute will raise victorious hands not to greet the great conquerors, but to take the cup of their condemnation from the hands of the enslaved humanity. He will soak submissively the chalice of eternal death. That immense sacrifice will open to humans an opportunity to be redeemed, returning to the arms of the Creator, together with the lost dominion. The hosts, surprised at the revelation of the Eternal, inquired into the identity of that substitute. The Creator, with a loving smile, he told them, "I will be that man. My spirit will rest on a virgin, and in her a holy son will be begotten. That young man will be divine and human. In his humanity, he will be submissive to the divinity that will dwell in him. The redeemed will see in him the Father of eternity, the Creator and Redeemer, the King of kings. His name will be Yahshua. Assuming human nature, God could pay the high price of ransom, dying instead of sinners." The hosts of light fell silent upon knowing the plan of the Creator. The thought of seeing him submit to such a painful sacrifice in order to redeem the lost dominion was too much to bear. There was, however, no other hope in victory except through that loving surrender. After enjoying the high price of sin, the young couple felt bad. Initially, they felt a great emptiness in the heart, which was then filled with remorse and sadness. They perceived that, inspired by greed, they had sealed their sad luck and that of all creation. They seemed to hear in the distance the groan of a defeated universe. The sun, which had filled them with life and heat on that day, was hiding in the horizon, announcing a black night. The tree, which had previously announced the happy encounter with the Creator, seemed to involve them in a sentence that they would never wake up to a new day. They dared not even look toward the top, afraid to see the ray of judgment fall on them that would reduce them to dust. With his eyes directed to the cold ground, the sentence came to mind: "On that day you eat of him, you will surely die." Desperate tears rolled down their faces as they awaited the tragic end. When considering the reason for his rebellion, Adam began to recriminate his wife for having given ears to the snake. Eve, in turn, seeking to excuse herself, threw guilt on the Creator, saying, "Why did the Eternal allow the snake to deceive me?" The love that reigned in the human heart disappeared, giving rise to pride and selfishness, which melded into resentment and hatred. His nature was no longer pure and holy, but corrupted and full of rebellion. Everything was changed. Even the gentle breeze that had previously bathed them in refreshing caresses now froze the guilty couple. The trees and flowery quarries, which were his delight, now consisted of obstacles when walking aimlessly on that night. Satan's purpose in fulfilling the Sabbath of darkness seemed to have been fulfilled. On that night there was not even the silver reflection of the moonlight to tell them of hope. The twinkling stars suspended in the dark sky were obfuscated by pain. The darkness of that long night of sin descended upon the world, shadows under which so many would crawl without the hope of a dawn. And it was high night already, and the darkness seemed to wrap the sad couple in eternal shadows. They didn't even meditate on their few words, suffocated by the agony of a dawn. Groped from here to there in the expectation of impending judgment, which would reduce them to cold dust, forgotten under those endless darkness. Suddenly a glow appeared in the sky, which was increasing as it approached the earth. The couple shuddered because they knew it was the Creator. Sorry. The couple shuddered because they knew it was the Creator who came to give them the punishment. Overcome by panic, they ran, distancing themselves from Mount Zion, the place of shameful fall, just where they saw their Creator go. They, who always ran to meet the loving Father, attracted by his light, now fled desperately in search of dark places and dense forests. The Eternal, moved by infinite love, began to follow in the footsteps of the fugitive couple. As he walked, he cried when he remembered the happy moments that he had spent with them in that paradise, how everything had transformed. His children could no longer see him a father of love, but someone who, angry, sought to punish them. Moved by a strong yearning to embrace his human children, God made the voice reverberate in an inquiry: Adam, where are you? And his voice, sounding in the darkness, brought only an empty echo that spoke of ingratitude and rebellion. As he wished to wrap the couple in an ardent embrace, and with words of affection confess his love was the same. Seeing his children fleeing his presence, seeing his children fleeing his presence, the Eternal was overwhelmed with great pain. Before his troubled look of tears, the future of the human race stretched. How many, deceived by Satan, would flee his presence during that long night of sin, judging in him a tyrant Lord, who lives in looking for faults and weaknesses in the sinners in order to punish them. The Creator, however, would not give up looking for them through the shady valleys of the kingdom of death, until they conquered a repentant people. Adam and Eve, exhausted by the hurried escape, hid through the foliage at the foot of the fig tree. Recognizing their nakedness, they tried to make aprons by sewing those sheets. Dressed like this, they thought they could get rid of the feeling of shame before the Creator. The Eternal, approaching the place where the couple was hiding, asked, Adam, where are you? Unable to hide more from God, Adam rose together with his companion and, crestfallen, appeared before the Creator, prostrating at his feet. They failed to face him anymore due to the feeling of guilt. The Creator affectionately took them by the hand, lifting them from the ground, and with an expression of sadness on the countenance asked them, why did they flee from me? Why did they eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Adam, all trembling in a voice broken by sobs of fear, replied, the woman you gave me as a companion, she gave me the fruit and I ate. With this answer, Adam sought to excuse himself, throwing the blame on his wife. Turning to Eva, the Eternal asked him, why did you do that? Eva promptly replied, the snake deceived me and I ate. Both did not want to acknowledge the blame, throwing it on others. Simply put, they attributed responsibility to the Creator for all the wrongdoing. Why had He granted them free will? Why had He created the woman? Why had He created the snake? Silent, God watched His children who, shy and bewildered, stood before Him. With deep sadness, He foresaw that this would be the experience of countless human beings in the course of history. How many would be lost for not recognizing one's own fault? How many would try to justify themselves, throwing their mistakes on others and even on the Creator Himself? With soft words, the Eternal tried to make them acknowledge their guilt. Only by recognizing their need could they be helped. Looking at the fragile garments woven by sinful hands, He said to the couple, "Children, those garments are insufficient. Immediately drying up, they will fall apart. You need lasting garments that can cover your nakedness, freeing you from condemnation. If you would like, I can give you that garment." In the face of the Creator's kind words, which brought hope, the couple prostrated themselves repentantly, detaching themselves of their illusory garments, symbols of their failure. They now longed for the garments of salvation promised by the Divine Father. After contemplating His children who, repentant, lay at His feet, the Eternal took them affectionately by the hands and lifted them. He was glad to reveal to the fallen man the plan of redemption. With tenderness, God began to discover to them first the bitter results of his fall, saying, "Children, you sealed the destiny of all creation in the grip of death. Disharmony already penetrates nature, trying to destroy it in all the virtues. The abyss in which you immersed yourself in disobedience is also deep, so that you can be reached by my powerful arm. Thus, detached from the source of life, there is no other human being left beyond death." After uttering these words that revealed a sad fate, the Eternal invited the couple to follow Him. Adam and Eve, in tears, they followed the Creator in His steps of justice, which led Him to the place of the shameful fall, where they supposed to find a painful end. On that painful walk, they sobbed when they remembered in their past of glory undone by ingratitude. Turn this light down. Ingratitude. On that painful walk, they sobbed when they remembered their past of glory undone by ingratitude. How the terrible expectation of being reduced, along with the creation, to cold ashes under the darkness of that night of sin hurt in their soul. As they walked, they contemplated through the tears the numb beauty bathed in the light of God. They saw the innocent animals, who were not aware of the great pain. Suddenly the couple stopped, overcome by immense crying. His faltered steps had led them to a lamb, the dearest animal. Would your eyes of sweetness also go out? Drying their tears, the Eternal ordered them to take the innocent lamb in their arms, wrapping it next to his chest. They silently accompanied the steps of the Creator until they reached the top of Mount Zion, place of the shameful fall. Contemplating the remains of the fruit there, with impetus the memory of the divine judgment came to mind. On the day you eat of it, you will surely die. The terrible moment had arrived. The guilty man should drink the bitter chalice of death, succumbing hopelessly. Aware of their downfall, the couple perceived in horror that the hands they had brought to life now held a pointed stone knife. Trembling, they prostrated themselves and waited for compliance with the just sentence. While silenced by fear, Adam and Eve waited for the blow that would reduce them to dust. They felt the soft touch of the divine hands that lifted them into a new life. The condemnation, however, would fall on a substitute. Placing the knife in Adam's hands, the Creator said to him, "The lamb will die instead of you. Adam should sacrifice it." Frightened at the command of God, the couple, crying, began to cry, "Lord, the little lamb is innocent, not innocent." With an expression of justice, the Eternal added, "If he does not die, you cannot have the clothes of which I spoke." At the insistence of the Creator, Adam, all trembling in a painful effort, stuck that sharp stone in the little lamb's chest. The blow was fatal, and the little animal, shedding its precious blood, plunged into the darkness of an endless night. Contemplating the inert lamb on the bloody grass, the couple raised their voices and wept. They were beginning to understand the enormity of their tragedy. How terrible was death! She, in his possession, had turned off all the light of his eyes of the innocent animal. Leaning silently on the inert body of the lamb, the Eternal removed the skin covered with white wool, and with it made robes to cover the nakedness of the couple. After dressing them, he asked them with affection, "Do you understand the meaning of all this?" In deep reflection, through sobs of recognition and gratitude, the couple exclaimed, "He died in our place to give us his clothes." Adam and Eve, although they had understood that physical reality, were far from understanding the meaning of that event. To them, the Creator would reveal the mystery of divine love. With an expression of infinite mercy, God began to reveal to the human being the meaning of that painful sacrifice, saying, "The innocent little lamb, which today suffered, symbolizes a man to be born. In his eyes there will be that same tenderness, the same love, coated just coated for a just life, like the white wool that covered the lamb. That man will grow like a renewal on earth, not holding the bonds of sin in his hand. In his appearance, the man will not bring the pomp of a king, so he will be despised by many. He will be a man of pain, for the weight of the provocations will fall upon him. In his faithfulness to the kingdom of light, that man will fight the usurper enemy, finally defeating him. After triumphing in his struggles, he will take upon himself the burden of your condemnation that will cause him a terrible death. He will be pierced because of your rebellion and crushed by your iniquities. He will not be oppressed and humiliated, but and he will not open his mouth, just like the little lamb that today gave himself peacefully. Succumbing in death, he will grant you the merits of his victory. Wrapped in the garments of justice, you will be free from condemnation. Eternal life you will achieve in this way, by the sacrifice of that righteous man who will be born. Adam and Eve, who in a mixture of gratitude and pain heard the revelation of such great salvation, inquired reverently about that special man who in his offspring would have to arise in order to fulfill such an immense sacrifice. The Creator, looking at them tenderly, moved by a love that overcomes that same death, enveloped them in an affectionate embrace and revealed, "I will be that man." Surprised at the declaration of the Eternal, Adam and Eve were motionless, while contemplating his tender countenance. Understanding the meaning of the tremendous sacrifice, they prostrated themselves at his feet and with tears cried out, "We are deserving of death, Lord, but you are innocent and must not suffer in our place." Wiping away the tears, the Eternal with tenderness he spoke, "My children, I love you with an eternal love. I will die instead of you." Given this confirmation, the couple raised in their voice in a painful lamentation. They said, "We will kill the Creator, we will kill the Creator." But God began to comfort the couple with words of hope, saying, "After drinking the chalice of eternal death, I will resume life and go up to heaven. I will intercede there for the lost man. granting to all those who, repentant, accept my sacrifice, the garments of my victory. Together we will finally triumph over the kingdom of sin that will fall into ashes under our feet. I will then create a new heaven and a new earth, where only justice and love will reign. We will live like this forever, in a kingdom of perfect harmony and peace. The Creator, who accompanied by the couple was still in Mount Zion, concluded his revelation by saying, "The Garden of Eden will now be empty. The human being during the long night of sin will wander in his exile. He will not walk, however, alone. The Eternal, also a pilgrim, will tread with him all the thorny path until being able to climb up the lost mountain together, triumphantly triumphing over the kingdom of death. The tree of the science of good and evil, monument of rebellion, will then be undone, giving rise to a glorious tree that, joining its crown to the tree of life, it will become the memorial arch of the great victory. On the holy mountain, redeemed, then the universal throne will rest forever, which by the triumphant faithful will be called the throne of God and the Lamb." Adam and his companion, after hearing such comforting and hopeful words, raised their voices in a song of gratitude and praise. They now knew the infinite love of their Creator and were willing to serve it. After comforting the couple, God led them out of Eden. It was not easy for them to say goodbye to that beautiful home. There they had awakened to life in the arms of the Eternal. There they enjoyed moments of pure happiness in the company of the Creator, the angels, and the docile animals. An infinite nostalgia seemed to involve the couple in their abandonment steps. It was with horror that Satan and his subjects witnessed the intervention of the Eternal. They were shaken at the surprising revelation of the rescue plan. With rabid frustration, they understood that if indeed the divine promise was fulfilled, there would be no hope. After considering everything that had happened, great anger took hold of his heart. He was not willing to recognize the redemption of the human being. He would make every effort to retain him, together with the kingdom that had been delivered to him. When the couple, accompanied by the Creator, reached the valley wounded by death, it dawned. There, Satan confronted them with fury in an attempt to seize the human being again. The couple was trembling on the face of the enemy, but God's protective hand calmed them, expressing in the countenance the firmness of a justice that is eternal. The Eternal silenced the threats of the enemy with the following words: "The human being belongs to me, because I bought it with my blood." As they walked silently beside the Creator, Adam and Eve watched with sadness the signs of death stamped on that nature before so full of life. The beautiful flowers, which had unbuttoned to exhale eternal aromas, now hung withered. The little birds, who happily greeted them at each dawn with their trills, now flew distant, sounding such sad songs. Everything was changed in nature. The science of good and evil had brought no good to the universe, but an intense spiritual and physical conflict. Faced with the devastating consequences of his fall, the couple, defeated by an inexpressible sadness, prostrated themselves and cried bitterly. God, who was also saddened by pain, contemplated the bleak stage, sought with words of hope to comfort them. He, he told them about the new heaven and the new earth that one day would create, where peace and love would reign in each heart. There they would always live together, not bringing on the forehead the marks of sadness, but crowns of eternal victory. There he would dry the tears on their faces, and he would never wet his eyes again. Protecting Adam and Eve in their steps, the Creator led them through a wounded valley until they reached the foot of a hill. They climbed it in slow steps while exchanging words of encouragement and hope. His feet finally reached the soft grass that covered the spacious top of that hill. It was on that place that the couple saw each day the sun decline, bathing the sky in valleys of bright red, like the blood that had dripped from the lamb's chest. Turning to the eastern side, the couple, in a mixture of pain and nostalgia, contemplated in the distance the landscapes that enveloped them in a happy past. When they saw Mount Zion, which stood majestically in the middle of Eden, they cried when they remembered the fall. How weak they had been! The sun was declining in his day, announcing the arrival of one more sad night, the first out of paradise. In a calm gesture, the Eternal, showing them the outstanding valley on the hill, spoke to them with affection. Here will be your temporary abode. From here you can contemplate the paradise that for some time will remain on earth, until it is collected to its place of origin within the celestial Jerusalem. There, protected by justice, await the dawn of victory. When the great day arrives, we will return together to Zion, where we will be crowned in glory, in a kingdom of eternal happiness and peace. After saying these words, God commanded the couple to build an altar of stones there, on which every week, on the night before Saturday, they should immolate a lamb in memory of his sacrifice. As a sign of his presence, and for the certainty that his sins would be forgiven, he would light a fire on the altar, which would last all night, until he completely consumed the sacrifice. For the human being would be able to affirm his faith about the revealed truths, and not in the visible manifestation of the person of the Creator. He would remain invisible from that moment onwards. Only on special occasions, when his appearance or that of angels became necessary for new revelations and warnings, would this occur. Contemplating his children saddened at that moment when they would be left apparently alone. The Eternal said to them with love, "Children, even if you have to remain in this hostile environment, you do not need to fear, for I will remain by your side. I will be a fellow friend on this journey. I will carry your pains on your shoulders, your desires, your struggles. When, tempted by the enemy, they were about to give in, they will be able to find shelter in my arms, which will always be extended to save them. And if one day you will not resist, and by the fury of the enemy you will be dragged into the depths of the abyss, do not despair, believing you have no hope, for I will be there to meet you with my forgiveness and strength. Always keep in mind the meaning of the garments received from my hands, for they speak of the redemption of the man belongs to. Rest, my children, in the arms of love." After comforting the couple with these promises, the Creator, seeing that they were sleepy and fatigued, made them rest in his lap, and, as usual, gently caressed them to numb them. Seeing them forgotten in their sleep, God wept as they foresaw the suffering that would experience upon awakening. With their hearts broken by the pain caused by that physical separation, the Creator left the couple asleep on the grass, after kissing the faces already marked by the suffering. His light dissipated by becoming invisible, giving rise to the darkness of that first night out of paradise. And the subconscious of the couple began to parade colorful dreams of a happy past. The beauties of Eden were once again in the middle, filled with eternal joy. Grateful for life, they ran through the flowery fields, playing with animals. Happily joined the voices to the angels in the harmonious songs in praise of the Creator. So many beautiful scenes paraded in his subconscious. But those dreams became nightmares, making them relive their tragedy. Agonizers woke up in the darkness of that first night in exile. Failing to fall asleep, the couple remained in tears until they were comforted by the dawn of that revealed to them in the distance of the nostalgic paradise. God, although invisible, remained next to Adam and Eve there on the hill. Their sufferings was his sufferings, as well as the hope that one day they would return victorious to Zion. Before the contemplative gaze of their Creator, the bleak future of humanity was revealed. With regret, I saw countless creatures perishing without salvation for rejecting his love. Tears wet his face, foreseeing the enemy using all cunning in order to retain the human beings under his domain. Long would be the night of sin, and the battle for the conquest of the lost kingdom was at odds. The triumph of the light would require from God an immense sacrifice in the person of the Messiah. In his time, he would be born among men with the mission of paying the ransom price. Through him, many would be freed from the claws of the enemy, all those who accepted him as Savior and King. All those chosen, the enemy would attack all the forces trying to make them fall. In his vision of the future, the Creator contemplated with joy the final triumph of the redeemed. They had been extremely tested, but in everything they were more than conquerors through him who redeemed them from the darkness into that kingdom of light. After anticipating the sufferings that would result from the great struggle, the Eternal extended his gaze across the captive plains, contemplating there the rebel hosts willing to fight. The aim of these armies was to seize the human being in which the right of dominion over the universe was sealed. Contrary to the nature of the Creator is war, but for the defense of his children he was willing to use his power. His strength, however, would only be used fairly. If the human being rejected the protection offered by the sacrifice of the Messiah, God could do nothing to prevent himself from perishing in the grips of the enemy. Adam and Eve, however, had repented of their great sin, receiving by the mercy of God garments of salvation, symbolized by the skins of the sacrificed lamb. Justified by the delivery of the couple, the Eternal summoned his powerful armies for the fight. In prompt obedience to the hosts of light, stormed the outer space in the direction of the earth, surrounding with strong wall by the hill, bearer of that treasure redeemed by the blood of the divine King. The human being was given a duty in Eve to take care of nature. They prepared quarries for flowers. They reaped fruits for support. They directed the animals in their innocent life, training them to be useful. These occupations had been for them sources of development and pleasure. Now, despite the adversaries, they should continue to perform that duty. The work itself, carried out according to the Creator's orders, would already cancel out many enemy attacks. The couple's first occupation on that great morning brought revelations of God's great love, hitherto unknown. As they gathered the stones for the construction of the altar, they experienced the pain of the wounds that drip blood, as well as the fatigue that caused sweat to emanate. Feeling and contemplating everything in their own flesh, they loved the Savior more, for whom the built altar foreshadowed greater wounds, which would shed all his blood, as well as fatigue that would undermine all the stages of his life. The look of nostalgia and hope of the couple and now on would never perch on distant Eden, without first discerning the altar of sacrifice. The altar, with its stains of sweat and blood, would remain as a remembrance of pain and suffering that, after moistening the lips of human beings, would transship into the Creator's cup. After contemplating for a long time the paradise of eternal life that extended far beyond that dark altar of death, the couple experienced the sweet relief of rest. Eager to know the landscapes of their new home, Adam and Eve, encouraged by hope, went for a walk. Their steps led them along the paths of smiles and tears, of charms and disappointments, of delicate flowers unbuttoned, bathed in perfume, and of flowers lying withered and odorless, of still docile and submissive animals, and of enemy, fierce and menacing animals. The couple discerned in their walk the currencies of two worlds, that of light and that of darkness, of love and selfishness, of hope and despair, of harmony and disharmony, of life and death. That vision filled them with sadness, and they cried long. That sadness would increase even more in the future when they discovered the depth of those currencies within their offspring.